another live episode of like episode of Puzzles with Benjamin. Pretty much, if you're watching this um after live, I would suggest pausing in between each one of them. That way, you can try to solve it using the method that I explain and see how well you do with it. And the method that I normally do is I just basically look for checks, captures, and threats um, in your own games. Um, that's the first thing that you can calculate pretty easily, And it's really important to when you do this to basically like for your own games. That's the first thing to look at, and then after you look at that, basically just kind of you kind of have to also, how do I put it? You kind of have to figure out how to look for it, and also with your opponent, not just yourself. Pretty much, you start off with yourself, like checks, captures, and threats, but then you also have to look for it when it comes to your opponent against you. So I'm gonna go ahead and just get started. Give me 1 second here. Okay, I'm ready now. All right, checks, captures, and threats. Normally I talk about the three pawns in front of the king a few times already, and in this situation, that's not the case, but it's basically still covered. It's pretty much covered because this pawn here is controlling these two squares, so the king cannot move forward, and his own pawn is blockading him. So for that reason, it's almost the same thing as having three pawns himself. So, and that'd be checkmate. Um, Give me 1 second. I want to make sure I give the right link to the chat. I don't want to give everybody the wrong link. Make sure it's the right one. Yeah, it was the right one. For some reason, I started thinking I gave the wrong link for some reason. All right. I'm back now. Okay, that's all fine. Checks, captures, and threats. Here, instead of three pawns, there's two, and there's a knight blocking this one. So it's basically almost the same thing. It's blocking the square, the retreat square of the. Um, so basically, this check right here will also be checkmate because so the two pawns and the knight is blocking off the square for the king, so he can't retreat. It's important to learn how to do that, especially in games. Here the normal pattern for checkmate, back rank mate, I mean. So it's called check, and the queen can come back to block. It doesn't matter what square it'll be taken. If it had an extra defender, the king would be fine, but in this case, it does not. And well, yeah, and they have let me see here, checks, captures, and threats. It's black to move. Now, I do notice that if he captures, you'd be able to make a queen. But if I move up here and he doesn't capture, I still make a queen. It doesn't matter because if he would, like I said, if he captures this way, you can move up to G2, and next move you're making a queen. If he doesn't capture, then next move you go to H2, and if he captures this way, you will make a queen. And there's no defense against it. There's nothing he can do about it. I mean, he may try to prolong it by calling check this way, but you can move your king out the way. So it's not really worried about it. There's an extra pawn here too. So if you just call check, I'm assuming you'd have to at least defend against that pawn. So all right. I was a little worried that I might be off, but I'm glad I wasn't. That'd be kind of embarrassing. Checks, captures, and threats. So first, this king is blocked off, like the normal pattern for checkmate, for back rank mate. In this case, he has two pieces defending. If I take this right here, he can just take it back and nothing much going on. But this capture here is different. It comes with a check. And he'd have to defend. And the two defenses are the knight or capturing. And if he captures, you capture back, the knight will move back, and that's basically the basic checkmate pattern. So I like how they start off with a couple puzzles with back rank mate because that's the most common checkmates in the beginning of the, when you first start playing. So checks, captures, and threats. Let's see here. There's no captures. The only check is right here. So let's go calculate that. The knight is covering this square. This check will be covering this and all this diagonal. I mean this rank. And the king will move over one. So all these squares will be covered once I take this pawn and call it check. The king will move over one, and this right here will be mate because he has nowhere else to go. There's checkmate in two. Oh, well, and three. Checks, captures, and threats. This is like very similar to Scholar's checkmate. That's the first thing I noticed. Queen and bishop hitting the f2 pawn or the f7, depending on which side you're doing it on. And this is f2. And the queen capture will be putting the king in check, and the king can't move because the queen will be covering all these squares. Everything here is covered by the queen, and the bishop is defending the queen, so the king can't capture it. So that's a very basic checkmate. This was from Scholar's checkmate. If you look that up, this right here is checks, captures, and threats. It's very simple. Check. He only has these two squares, and it doesn't matter. This will be checkmate. The queen will come here, hit those squares, and the king can't capture because the pawn is defending it. So that's a checkmate. Okay, it didn't make me do it fully, but I'm pretty sure you understood. Here, I know this is check, and I'm attacking the rook. So this would be a check. The king will move over. I'll take it. King will move here. I'll capture. And I'll be winning right there. So it should be easy win. Yeah, because the pawn will make it for sure. Super easy. Wait 1 second here. Okay. Checks, captures, and threats. I don't see a check. That's out. Captures. Well, this pawn is undefended. And if I do take it, I'll be forking the queen and the rook. And I'll be winning the exchange. The exchange basically what it basically means is that the knight is value 3, the rook is 5, and the queen is 9. So winning the exchange pretty much means that I'd be getting a higher piece for one of my lower pieces. So I'll be winning the exchange. So I believe that's the answer. I don't see any other checks, and I don't see any immediate captures anywhere else. And that's pretty much it. This is the only one. Okay, well, he's obviously checking me, so I have to take care of that first. And I guess he's just sacrificing his pieces instead of just giving up the simple exchange. which is fine for me. All right, checks, captures, and threats. I don't have any checks. I have only 3 pawns, and there's nothing I can capture. The way pawns capture, there's nothing I can capture, and I can't threaten anything. So I'm assuming it's just moving a pawn. So let's say if I move this pawn up, the king won't be able to catch it. But yeah, look at the knight. Can the knight catch the pawn? So you move up. Let's say the knight moves here, and the pawn basically gets away. The next move would be to one of these 2 squares, and that would be a queen. Let's see if there's a different way for the knight. Yeah, it doesn't really matter where the knight goes. It will be making a queen no matter what, and the king can't catch it because I move first. So that's pretty much it. Looks like he's gonna call a check, move up, and make a queen. That's what it looks like he's gonna do. So if I make a queen right now, he's gonna call a check. I'm gonna be forced to move up, and he will make a queen. Or I can just take the pawn. That's even better. So I think it's fine if I make queen. For a second there, I didn't even consider taking the pawn. So I'm gonna go ahead with that. All right. Checks, captures, and threats. That's the first thing to look at. The only check, well, this is a check, but it doesn't make any sense. He'll just take it, be free queen. The only check that I see that might make sense is over here. And these pawns are covering these squares. So that check will also be checkmate because the king can't go anywhere because of the pawns and the queen. So it's a very simple checkmate. Excuse me. Checks, captures, and threats. Go here for check. This is basically the same thing as two bishops checkmate. So the king has nowhere to go. And he can maybe block with the rook for one round, and you take the rook, block for the bishop, take the bishop. That's checkmate. That was really simple. Checks, captures, and threats. Check. If he were to move up, you can take up the knight. And if you were to capture back, you get a rook. It's a very common pattern. You should remember this one, especially after this pawn moves with the knight. Usually the knight is either here or here on one of these 2 squares. When I do it, I've always put my knight over here. But in this case, they probably moved the knight up and then someone tried to block it this way. So that's what it looks like, which also works. I normally have my knight over here, though, after he moves. I never try to provoke it. It's actually pretty nice. I never thought of trying to provoke the f6 move. I always moved here afterward and then took advantage of it. So that's pretty nice. That'll be a check. You move up, you take it. If he takes back, you get a rook. All right. Looks almost exactly the same. Let's see if it works here. I can also take the knight for free, but he'll take my knight back. So that's the even trade. So let's see. I'm pretty sure something better here. So check. Like I said, it looks almost the same. And basically the same result will be winning the rook. So and this type of does come up in games when you recognize it. Like it does come up in games. I've had it happen a couple of times. Now I can't call a check here. He moves back. And this right here is a good hold for the queen because it'd be threatening checkmate. So be check. Oops, sorry. It'll be check. I'm glad I didn't left click by accident. and threatening checkmate, he can take and call check. And after I move, he can call check. I can move to the light square, not the dark because his bishop can start coming in. He can call check, and I'll move to the light square. So he can do lots of checks, but as long as I'm going to dark square, I should be fine because his bishop, he only has a dark square bishop. So okay, they didn't make me do all that. He's lagging. Oh, that's okay. That's perfectly fine. Hold on 1 second here. Yeah, someone group is lagging. Heat proof. All right. Well, I mean, you can always watch this after. That's perfectly fine. Now it's checks, captures, and threats. This is a check, but you can just move out the way. Let's see here. I'm a little confused on this one, to be honest. Um, First off, I have 2 pieces versus his 3. So I'm assuming it's a checkmate, but I don't see a checkmate. I mean, I see a check. He can move over, check with the bishop. It doesn't matter if he goes here or here. That would be checkmate. So, yeah, that's a little weird. It looks very weird. I probably would not have noticed this in a real game. Um, I'm not entirely sure if I would have or wouldn't have. I mean, if I kept looking at checks, I would have. If it was low on time, I wouldn't have found it for sure. That looks really odd. Checks, captures, and threats. Well, this here's a check, but you can just take the pawn, and now my rooks are pretty bad shape. I can make a queen. If he takes, I take, and then he can just take my rook and my pawn. I mean, that's probably what I'll go for in a real game. Um, but I have to always consider like, do we have a checkmate? Um, that's for sure important. I mean, I can take the knight first, but if I make a queen this way, he'd be winning. So I think it's just make a queen, do a trade. But then I don't know what his move is after that. I also have this pawn here. I can make a queen this way. Didn't even see that. Um, so what will be better? I'm assuming this will be better. I don't see any crazy threat with the knight. The knight can actually take a rook. So I can take a queen, make a queen. He can call it check, take a rook. But then I have, yeah, I think this one's better. This one here works, but I don't, I just win the rook. This one here, I win a rook. But I have my queen. Yeah, I think this is better. Oh, the pawns are going this way. And it's white to move. For some reason, I thought it was black to move. Okay, well, if I was black and I was going this way, that would be awesome. But I'm white and I'm going up this way. So it's like completely different. Okay. Now that I know what's going on here, I am white. Um, My brain is like trying to catch up with what just happened. Checks captures threats. This would be a check. He'll have to move up. This would be a check right after. If he takes a pawn, he'll lose both his rooks. So does he have to take the pawn? This would be a check. Yeah, he does. He can't go here because of the king, and he can't go here because of the rook, which means he has to take the pawn. So it is. This is the right here. Lose both his rooks. Oh, they didn't even show the second one. Checks, captures, and threats. This is a check. You move over. Check. You move back. I can take the queen, but I think this would be better. We check. If he moves this way, I'll take for checkmate. If he moves back this way, then I can just call check. The queen will be forced to take, I think, in that situation. Yeah. And then there'll be mate. It'll be a smothered mate. So check. This is another checkmate pattern. Check. Okay. Well, they didn't make me do the whole thing. They should have. Because, I mean, not everyone knows a smothered mate. Even if you started off, some people may still take the queen. All right. Checks, captures, and threats. Black to move. Move up. If he tries to block it, obviously I can just make a queen. He can. I can also make a queen anyways. He can take the rook. I can actually be perfectly fine because my queen can call check. Yeah, I think that's fine. And then I can make a queen. He can take the rook, and then my queen can move somewhere else. Okay. Checks, captures, and threats. This is the first check I notice. The king can't move here because the knight has it covered. So it's forced to move to the square. So he come over. And this is a checkmate with the bishop. This is a checkmate with the knight and bishop. The king can't move here either because the knight has this square covered as well. So that's checkmate. And this is good to remember, by the way. This is why let me move this out the way. This is why the fianchetto, the bishop is supposed to be in a square, but for some reason the bishop's way over here. It makes a lot of weaknesses, and you actually can do this if somebody decides to move this pawn and not have the bishop there, or if you take this bishop off a knight at some point. This checkmate can actually happen in the game. Checks, captures, and threats. Well, first thing I notice is this is undefended, but he'll take my queen. So if I call check, it's the first check I notice. Wherever the king goes, I might be able to take that, but if the king moves up, I actually might be able to take his queen. So I'm sure this is the first move. And it would depending on if he blocks it or if he moves over will determine my next move, because I do have this as a threat, and I also, if the queen is up here, I also have this threat of taking his queen with a check. So this really depends on where he goes. All right, he decided to go here, so I can't fork the queen and king, but I still have a free rook over here. It looks like that's the answer, but I want to make sure he can't. Yeah, if he tries to counterplay it, I can just defend it, so it'll be fine. So I can take it and still defend my pieces. So yeah, it's also important to be able to do that in your games when you're taking stuff, to make sure you're defending your own pieces, or you can fall for traps and stuff, which I still do time to time. But being aware of it means that it will happen less often. and that's super important. So, all right, checks, captures, and threats. This is a check, and it's also hitting the rook. You have like a lot of stuff going on here, and probably even look like maybe checkmate very soon. This would be a check, and the king, yeah, really checkmate. He can't move anywhere. The bishop has these squares covered, so the knight king can't go there, and the king can't go here because of the pawn. So, check, captures, and threats. I can't go here because the bishop has it covered, but I can call check this way. Computer will probably block with the bishop first, take a check, and the king only has the square or the square. And it doesn't matter which way, I'll be checkmate with the queen. Excuse me. Checks, captures, and threats. I don't really see any checks here. The only capture I see is taking a pawn, which doesn't really seem to do much. So I'm a little confused. There's no checks or captures immediately that I can notice that will be worth anything. So now I gotta look for a threat. Like what? How can I threaten? How can I threaten black? How can I threaten So nothing stands out to me. Nothing at all. I can move the rook up here to bring my rook in. Now, if my rook is right here, that would be mate. This is a very common pattern, and the king can't go anywhere. So, since I know if my rook was here, it'd be checkmate. I have to look at how to get my rook there. Now, are we threatening it this way? Yeah, and in chess, you have to think in reverse if you remember patterns. That is very helpful to learn how to do. For example, I want to do checkmate. If my rook's there, be checkmate. So I gotta how do I make that happen? I'd have to move here, here, and here. So I think that's the puzzle. So let's go ahead with that. Okay. Next move, if I take this, he can move here, and I call it check. He'll move away, and I can take his rook for free, which a rook and two minor pieces versus rook should be a very easy game. Make sure that's what it is. It looks like that's it. Okay. Checks, captures, and threats. This is the only check I see. And if he were to take it, and I were to take it back, I would have to fight for a draw. He has 2 pawns versus a bishop. And I don't think that's the answer. I'm pretty sure the answer is check this way. The king can't be defended. If he moves back, I would just be calling checkmate. If he were to move the queen here, I would be check, and he would have to move back anyways, and that'd be mate. He can't move forward because of the king. This king right here is blocking it off, so he can't do that. So this looks like this is a right good check. This right here will make it a bad game. You can either lose or draw. And over here is the winning check. All right, checks, captures, and threats. I don't see an actual. This is a check. So let's calculate that first. It's easiest to calculate. That'd be a check. He'll move over, protect it, and I don't see an actual follow up. If I take this, he can take back. This would be a check after that. But either which way he moves, I don't see a follow-up after that. So that's not the answer either. So I don't think it's taking the rook, and I don't think it's taking the knight. So checks, captures, and threats. So how do I go about this? It's not a check, and it's not taking the knight. And I have to really look at this one. I don't think this is it, but I have to really look at it. If you were to take back with the rook, my queen would be in danger. The queen's in danger, so the queen has to do something if I do that. Yeah, I'm kind of honestly, I'm kind of a little bit at a loss. I'm not entirely sure if you guys see anything or not, but in this case, I'm actually a little bit at a loss here. Let's count the pieces to see if they're even. Okay, looks like it's even. Excuse me. If I take the knight first, he can't take this because I'll take that and I'll be winning the exchange. So if I take the knight first, yeah, this right here puts black in a bad spot, I think. He'd be forced to take, but that's where I don't know where the continuation goes. I mean, that's a check. He'll take it. The queen come up, and I'd be threatening this square here. In a real game, I think I would just take here in a real game because he can't take the rook because I'll win the exchange. He would be forced to take with the pawn, and then I'll take the rook, and I'll come up this way. So let's see if that's what they want. Okay, they lose the exchange. Okay. I didn't really see through the puzzle fully. It was a little bit confusing, complicated. I just went with what I would do in a game, and I'm glad it worked. Black to move, checks, captures, and threats. Black is moving this way. White is coming down. If I call it check, the king has nowhere to go, and I were to take, he would have called check, and he would make a queen. So this check is bad because I would just be helping him make a queen right away. If I were to take the rook up here and then king move up, and I go to b8, if he moves the pawn to a7, I go to a8. He's left defending the pawn, and I can make a queen. So it's not a check, but it's the capture this time. The only reason I remember this because I know this is a drawing position. I learned about it a while ago. This is right here, basically. If I had no pawn here, this would be a draw. But because I have a pawn here, it's winning. So, all right, checks, captures, and threats. Check would be the two are checks. So now I gotta look at both of them to see which one is better. This check, this is up blocked off by the queen. So the king would have no squares if I do this check right here. He can block this way with f5. You take it. It looks like it's checkmate. So yeah, it looks like it's checkmate. Checks, captures, and threats. This is a check, and this is a check, and this is a check. This is a bad one. He'll just take it. And this check here, the king will move over. He can't go this way because of the rook. So this would be a check. He'll move over, and that would be mate. Excuse me. All right, checks, captures, and threats. Let's see here. This is a check. This is covered by the bishop. The queen would have 2 squares covered. That would be also mate. All right. Checks, captures, and threats. If I take the rook, he's going to move. If I were to take the pawn, he'll go over. If I move over, he'll make a queen. So basically, if I take the rook, I lose the game. That's not very good for me. Not very good at all. If I were to take the pawn, he can call a check. I move over. Check. I move over. I don't see him able to take this pawn. I think he would just be a draw. Yeah, because if I take it, he'll just make a queen. So I think the answer is to take this pawn. And I think it's to be a draw. Nope. I still don't think the answer is taking the rook. I probably had to move the king somewhere else. I thought it was just... All right. It definitely wasn't taking the rook, that's for sure. All right, checks, captures, and threats. Wait to move. This right here is a check. And it's protected by the rook. And I have the bishop hitting this square. So if I hit check here, if the king were to move back, this would be threatening mate. It'd be threatening mate. It wouldn't be mate immediately. If I go here, he moves up. This would be checkmate. So he'd have to move back somewhere. If he moved back here, it would be mate immediately. If he moves here or here, I'd have to move my bishop around. So that would be checkmate soon. All right. Checks, captures, and threats. I got pretty happy about that. I think doing 20 is good for anyone who does these. I think 20 shows that you understand tactics at a pretty good, I think. If you haven't made 20 yet, that should be a goal for sure. For black to move, checks, captures, and threats. There's no check that works. This is only check. He would just take. Oh, wait, he won't take it. I don't know why I thought he would, but he can move out the way. He can just go right here. So because of that, if I move my king here, the bishop won't be able to check it. His rook won't be able to check it, and I'll be threatening. So the answer isn't this check. He can just move over, and I had no follow-up. The answer isn't a capture, so it was a threat. And this right here is a threat. Moving the king blocks these squares off the king. This bishop already has all these blocked off. The rook already has all these blocked off. So all that's left is to put him in check in that situation. So I'll be threatening here. So when I go here, he may block off of his bishop and just take his bishop for free. So yeah, because if he didn't do that, it'll be checkmate in 1. So he's blocking off the checkmate, but you still get a free bishop. Checks, captures, threats. White to move. White to move. 'Not entirely sure if I like this one. if he were to take it, yeah, I don't know exactly what to do here, to be honest. I don't see an actual check that works. I can't capture it because you just take it. And I don't see an actual threat here. I mean, this pawn's under attack. He can just take it. If I move it up, he can just take this pawn. And he'll be defending his own rook. In a real game, I would consider moving my knight here. So if he takes it, I can take his rook and have two knights versus rook. That's pretty much what I would be doing. So let's go ahead with that. Okay. Sometimes what I do in a real game works in an actual puzzle when I'm unsure of what the answer is. Checks captures threats. This is a check. First check I notice. He can take it with it, but I can come down and call it check. He can block with his rook, and that would be me. So check. Ooh, he blocked first. If I take this now, his king can move over. I don't like this. Excuse me. This is a free rook, free knight though. So do I take first and then take, or do I just take here? Oh, his knight can take this, so I have to take first and then take the knight. Okay, I thought that was it. That was pretty good. Oh, if I took the knight and he would take back, that would be me. So that's what I missed. Okay. All right. Well, that was a good game, you guys. Well, good puzzles. 33 is not a bad number. If you want, you can like, subscribe, share. That would be nice. And share with your friends for sure. Or even anywhere that, different websites and stuff, different, Facebook groups and everything. And yeah, if you made it this far, I'm gonna get off now, and also you can donate. That would be really appreciated. I normally have my link to donate at on YouTube, so I'm not sure if you're watching on YouTube or on Twitch, but all right, thank you.